Good morning and welcome. My name is Doug Reeder. I'm the executive chairman and one of the co-founding partners here at Sterling Seacrest Pritchard. We are one of the largest privately held independent insurance brokers in the southeastern U.S. We work in partnership with our clients and community to provide services, solutions, and support customized to today's marketplace. Our firm has a client-first philosophy and robust resource platform delivered by almost 300 colleagues across 6 offices in the Southeast. One of our key differentiators is deep industry verticals with dedicated teams, including healthcare, construction, real estate and hospitality, transportation, logistics, nonprofits, and private client risks. We also have a large benefits consulting practice, which spans various different industries. It's industry agnostic. We are also broker owned with a common long-term perspective and a commitment to educating and informing, which is manifested in today's program. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us. One of the number one issues we constantly hear from our clients is how do we attract talent? How do we keep talent? How do we manage the daily turnover and the growth, turnover related to growth, especially in the construction industry where I spend most of my time. It's the number one priority of every association we're a member of. Companies are ramping back up after the pandemic and the job market is extremely competitive. We're very pleased to have Tina Nazier, who's a director of strategic alignment at Wipfli. If you don't know Wipfli, they're a national tax assurance and consulting firm with over 3,000 associates around the country. They acquired a local firm called Porter, Keedle, and Moore about 2 years ago. So that was their entry into the Atlanta marketplace. That may be a firm that some of you all may know. We're very excited to have Tina here to talk to us about how to source, select, and retain the right candidates in today's ultra-competitive battle for talent. As a leader in Wipfli's organizational performance team, Tina focuses her talent in helping clients effectively address their strategic, people, and operational challenges. Drawing on more than 25 years of experience in leadership, professional coaching, organizational and cultural development, succession planning, change management, and performance improvement, she helps executives overcome the major issues that create roadblocks to reaching their full potential. I would just refer you to her profile at the firm also. She is a thought leader, she's a speaker, so there's lots of intellectual property that she shared with us on the firm's website, which you may find of interest. She's regularly speaking on this topic around the country. She's coming to us from an event last week, and so she's got a lot of cool insights, and we're very excited to have her here. So join me in welcoming Tina Nazier.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you. And I would also add that I have the bang up marketing department because you can tell the whole spiel that Doug just read that our marketing team wrote for me. So I appreciate that. First of all, I'm very pleased to be here with you today. As Doug mentioned, I head up our national organizational performance and strategy team for Wipfli. I focus a lot of my time, as Doug mentioned, I focus a lot of my time on construction and real estate. I also have a strong healthcare background and work with nonprofit, governmental, and some tribal clients as well. And one of the things that we all feel the pain with right now is this whole people issue. And typically when I'm working with an audience, it's a workshop that I'm doing. So think about today as the reason you have some notebook paper in front of you is because I want to give you some time to actually think about and come up with some new ideas today. Because what we always did is not going to get us to where we need to be in the future. So I would ask you to think about as your first step in maybe a little bit of an internal brainstorm for some things that you could be doing even after you leave today if you're not already doing some of these things. I will tell you that I have seen across the country this issue of a talent. We can call it war on talent. We could call the mass exodus from folks leaving different companies and going to other companies. This is just a huge issue. It's almost at crisis levels for us. I can tell you that there are some tried and true things that we can continue to do well, but there are some different ways that we should be thinking in order to really kind of hone in on how we as leaders are going to be able to address this issue. So I want to just give you a quick snippet of what I wanted to cover today. So we're going to talk a little bit about articulating your company's key attributes that make successful employees, because it's not a one size all fits world anymore, and nor was it ever. But you know, sometimes we get to the point where we're so desperate. It's like, okay, can you walk? Can you talk? Okay, you're hired. I mean, we're almost to that point right now where it's just like, I need a warm body to do this, right? I mean, we're at that level of desperation, aren't we? So I want to talk about what, you know, making sure that we step back from that desperation. And then I want to talk about attracting the right talent. Now, what the right talent is for me, and the right talent is for Denise, and the right talent is for Greg is not the same thing. So we still have to step back and say, nope, the warm body isn't the focus that we should have. It's, do we have the right people for our company? And then retaining great talent. When I think about how do we win this talent war, I think about it from three perspectives, kind of like a three-legged stool. First of all, do I attract the right people to my company? The right people, meaning they espouse our values, they deliver upon the value proposition that we want to deliver on to our customers and clients. Do I bring them on board successfully and keep them engaged throughout the life cycle? And the third thing is, am I helping them grow and develop to achieve their ideal future state in their career to maximize their potential? If I do that really well, I'm a lot more likely to have people stay with my company. And I'm going to give you a call to action at the end of this, because if we do nothing with what we talk about here today, we might as well have just gone to lunch somewhere else, right? But we don't want to do that. We want to make sure that this is time for us to really step back, because I think most of us in this room and on the live feature as well here today are probably on a hamster wheel most of the time in our days, and we don't necessarily step back and say, okay, I know this is a problem, but here's the quick fix, the Band-Aid, whatever I need to do to put on this to get me through this today. So we're going to go through a little of that, but I wanted to start you with somewhat of a little bit of a data perspective on this. Of course, it's probably a little bit more of a depressing way to think about this, but I want to be honest. When we think about the law of supply and demand, we know, and this data is right from the US Census Bureau, we know that our demand for workers actually exceeded the supply as far back as in about 2012, 2013. So you see that bar on there? And the sad part is when we got down here to 2019, 2020, it was really low. So our supply was well below our demand for labor in this country. And the interesting part of this is do you ever see that this actually gets up to the red line if we think about what our demand is and where we need it to be with the supply? We never quite get back up to that where we have people to be able to meet the demand of the workforce needs that we have. So basically the point I want to leave with this is that we will never have enough people to do what we want to do anyway. Let's figure out how we can think differently about those that we have. Is that fair? Okay. So attracting and retaining talent, really, as we think this going forward, we really have to think about a need to transform our thinking. And as Doug mentioned, I was at a national convention last week, and it was interesting because they had a panel of 3 college students in the industry that 2 of them were in their senior year graduating in May. One of them just graduated and now is out in the workforce. And one of the things that they talked about that helped them make their decision as to where they were going to go is they felt like they made a personal connection with the culture of that company that they were being enticed to join. They felt like they were not just, here's an application, here's a resume, here's a number, but they felt a real personal connection to what that company's culture was. And I'll talk a little bit about the culture and how you can do that in our next few slides here. But they had that connection. They also felt that there was a strong alignment with the leadership there, that they felt like as leaders, that company really felt that talent and workforce was a priority, and that there were a lot of different opportunities for them within that company, but there was a cohesion that they felt with the leadership team. Now, we also know that the war on talent is real and hitting every industry and every job. And if we don't really think differently about how we're going to be well equipped to at least fight this war, we're going to continue to struggle as a country. So I'm going to start you with something that maybe you've thought about, you may already have in place at your company, but maybe you haven't thought about as much in this attracting and retaining the right people. And it's your company's key attributes that make successful employees. It's your specific value proposition. What's at your core? What's in your genetic makeup of your company? What makes you who you are? So when you think about even this next generation of workers coming into the workforce, they need to feel personally attached to your mission, your vision, your values, where you're going. They want to feel like they can connect with that. So what's at your core of your company is really starting with the basic premise of your values, beliefs, and behaviors for all people within your business. Now I want to ask a question. How many in the room here actually have a fully built out set of values in your company? Okay, a few of you. Okay, for those of you that have that fully built out set of values, how many of you have gotten to the point where you have attached specific behaviors that you know will lead to someone exhibiting that value, and you've clearly defined those behaviors? Okay, that's typically what I see when I do a session like this. And I will tell you that I'm actually going to walk you through a process to help you get started with that today. Because my belief is that when I spend time with groups, I want to leave you with something that you have started in the session and you're taking back and finishing. Because otherwise, if we don't get it started, it's really hard to go back when you get into that hamster wheel again to actually do something with it. So I'm going to walk you through that process. The other piece is, how do you really articulate that value to people? And it's starting with clearly defining who you are at the core. Those values, beliefs, and behaviors that make up your business. So think of your core values as a few behavioral traits that are inherent in the organization now. They lie at the heart of the identity. They don't change over time. They must already exist. And in other words, they can't be contrived. Has anyone read any of the work by Patrick Lencioni? If you ever have a few moments to yourself, he has some phenomenal books. The most profound one that I read was Starting with Why. And he's got several other ones, great simple reads. And if anyone's interested after the session today, I have my Tina's Best Book list. I love to read anything that's not professional development or leadership or strategy. But I have like a 3 or 4 page list. If anybody wants that, just leave your cards at the end for me, and I'm more than happy to share that with you. But I will tell you, in his book, The Advantage, he talks about the importance as you are trying to, understand what's going to retain and attract and develop the right people for you. Those core values are at the heart of it. So what's the big deal about core values? I'm sure almost everybody in this room should recognize all 4 of those bullet points on the board. But when you think about these giants, Google has one of their values that says to focus on the user and all else will follow. It drives who they are, what they do, and more importantly, it drives how they want people to think and act. American Express, a will to win. We exhibit a strong will to win in the marketplace and in every aspect of our business. Again, think about what that does to deliver some very deep message for all of our people to be able to say, okay, I know what I need to do. I need to exhibit that will, that ability to make sure that I'm strong in all areas. Coca-Cola, accountability. If it's to be, it's up to me. Think about that value and what it would say to a new interviewee that you're talking to. What would something like that mean if you were saying, if you were to say accountability is one of our values, and here's the meaning of it. If it's to be, it's up to me. What do you think that would put in that candidate? Is it Renice? Okay. If it's to be, it's up to me. Yep. Great, great. So I can't just walk in and be a number. I'm part of this. I have to put in the sweat equity to get there. Whole Foods, we promote team member growth and happiness. Our success is dependent upon the collective energy, intelligence, and contributions of all of our team members. What would that tell me as a new team member? Anybody want to share a thought? What would I be doing behaviorally to live up to that? I'm going to operate in a collaborative environment. I'm going to contribute to that. I'm not going to sit back and allow others to do that for me. So think about values and those associated behaviors as drivers to differentiate you in your business. So I'm going to give you a quick model. I know we're only together an hour today, but I want to give you a quick model for this before we go on to a couple of the other topics that we're going to talk about in attracting and securing talent. But if I were to help a company with creating their core values, it would start with, I always say, if it's not at the top, it's not going to trickle anywhere else in the business. Core values have to start at the executive level. Executive leadership has to own, buy into, live the behaviors, and exhibit and mentor and coach others for that. The second step is identifying those role models, those shining stars within your company that have a very strong positive impact. Then once you've identified them, you're going to define those characteristics that make those star performers, what it is that makes them tick. Why do they come up on your list of star performers? The fourth step is discussing and debating and creating that final list of values based on what are those characteristics of those star performers. And then finally developing that behavioral attribute for each of those core values. And I'm going to quickly walk you through each of these steps. And what I'd like in the room here, you've got a cute little Sterling Seacrest notepad. I want you to think about in your companies, first of all, if you don't have core values already identified, I want you to start with a step one when I talk about it. And I want you to write down what's the first thing you need to do to start something like this within your business. So, setting expectation. Executive teams must understand and acknowledge the significance of core values in the company. They have to know that their impact on this is so critical that if they aren't living it, the rest of the people will not live it. And I will tell you time and time again, if I'm working with a client that they tell me, wow, our people don't understand this. We aren't, we have a culture of mistrust. I always go up the ladder and say, well, tell me how that's viewed at your executive level. And it's 99.9%, it starts there. So think about it. Is there something in your executive team level right now that might have to, as you think about what your values are is that group ready to live the values themselves and hold others accountable for those values? So if you're thinking about values creation, or even what are those few behaviors and beliefs that you want to make sure they're instilled across the company, it starts at that executive level. It starts at the leadership level. We have to all commit to that to get there. So if you don't have values already, I would ask you to write down an action item for yourself. Who within your executive leadership team can you have a conversation with about this? I see some of you, their phones up. Maybe you're texting that executive team member right now. But most likely, once you get past that level, then you can really start to identify what those core values are for your company. Identify those role models. So we all know them. I mean, think about off the top of your head right now. Is there one or two people that you're thinking of right now that they're just like, wow, if I had 10 more of them, we would be knocking this out of the park? Can anybody not think of one person right now that you would like to have cloned within your companies? Okay, so we all have these rock stars out there. So identify who they are and think about it from this. I always kind of like to give a little story. So if you were opening a new location of your business on a desert island and you had only 6 seats on this boat to get those people over, those are the ones that you know that they have to build that company from within. Who would you give those 6 seats to? So most likely you're going to choose those people that you know somewhere have a gut level kind of a feel or understanding of who you are as a company. Even if you don't have those clearly defined core values at this point, you just know that they're the ones that drive the customer or client engagement satisfaction or drives the internal satisfaction within your company. They have that credibility with their peers. They have that credibility with their customers. So I want you to think right now, put one person down on your notebook that you feel that you would definitely need to make sure you have a seat on this boat to get you to the new island. Write down one name right now. You're going to walk through this exercise as we talk about it today. So when you go back, you can think about how you have others as well. So write down one name. Step 3 is really defining those characteristics that make those people special. So if you've got your name, I want you to write down what makes that person special. What behaviors do you see them exhibit that it's just like comes natural to those individuals? They seem to fit well with who they are and what they're doing, and they shine. It's kind of like you see that little shining kind of glow around them when they talk to other people, when other people connect with them. So what behaviors do you see them exhibiting? Physical behaviors, and then what values do those behaviors seem to espouse? So I'm going to give you 2 minutes right now. Think about that one person. What makes them special? What behaviors do you see them exhibit? And then what values do you think those behaviors lead to? Is anyone willing to just share what they see in behaviors for some of these folks within their companies that really make them shine? Kelly.
One of the things I can think of with this particular person, honor, integrity, hard worker, positive attitude, helps to facilitate positive change.
Okay. So a few of those were values, behaviors that made you believe that they were honorable. Can you give me a quick, did you write anything down about that, Kelly?
She's always very proactive and helpful.
Okay.
Are the behaviors that we see with her interactions with others.
Perfect. So proactivity, helpful. What other behaviors did other folks? Michelle, please.
I think it's conscientious. She always responds in a professional manner. So I really appreciate that.
Okay. So I'll ask you, if you were saying someone's conscientious, what behaviors would you see that would make you believe they're conscientious?
Attention to detail.
Okay.
Willingness to explore options.
Okay, perfect. Those are great behaviors. So do you get what I'm saying? Is the behavior side of this is as important as the value itself. So what types of values, what other types of values did you write down that those behaviors led you to believe that that person exhibit? Driven. So tell me about what behavior that you thought would lead you to they were driven.
This individual is just a go-getter, like always there when someone's very dependable. Someone's there who's just a go-getter, just driven.
Sure. So that behavior, they're just constantly going. They don't wait for someone to come and tell them to do something. Great. So when you're defining those characteristics for your values, those behaviors help you do two things. First of all, it helps you know basically how you would want someone to exhibit that value. Because a lot of times if we say, well, one of our core values is respect, and I'm not going to put anybody on the spot at this point to see if your core values for those, that handful of folks who have those values, but respect may mean something completely differently to me, may mean something completely different to me than it would mean to a new employee or associate or to someone else within the company. So having those clearly defined behaviors are so critical to make sure we know how to exhibit that. Someone told me once that respect means the golden rule, that do unto others as I'd have done unto myself. Well, I'm not so sure what I want, if what I want everybody else to see that, if doing whatever you believe is good to be doing to everyone else, I might not agree with that. So we have to clearly define that. The fourth step is narrow and finalize. Which are the greatest importance to the people, to the company, and to the culture overall? So when you've got that list of characteristics and you've now said, okay, that boils down to about 6 to 8 to 10 values, that's the point where you want to spend some time with your team, your leadership team, across group of folks at every level within the company to really finalize what those values are. What are those that are greatest important to our company, our culture, our people, our customers and clients, which clearly define who the company is right now. Now, I don't know, I will also talk about something called the values traps that we get in, and that's another concept that Patrick Lencioni pulled together as well, is that sometimes we get in these values traps where we think about a value that, wow, we'd really like to have that value. We don't have it right now. We call those aspirational values. So when you're trying to define your company value of who you are, again, this is all in line with helping you retain the folks and attract the right people. Make sure that they're values you have within the company right now. An aspirational value trap would mean you're trying to grasp at something you don't have now, but wouldn't that be cool if we had that? It's not who we are at the core. There are also values I call them table stakes value. It's the ticket to the dance. So some of those table stakes values, if it's like so generic that every other business of our type has that, it's really not a core value that clearly defines us. Okay, and then the third values trap is the accidental values trap, which means, oops, we stumbled up upon that. We had one person that came into the organization and they seemed to have that value when they came in, but it's not necessarily an undercurrent within the entire company. So I would be careful of those values traps as you are trying to kind of align and refine your core values. And then finally, once you've identified what those values are, so let's give me an example of a value. And I want to walk through this behavioral development piece quickly with you because I think it's an interesting approach to how do you define those behaviors. What's a value anybody would want to unpack in this? Okay, so Todd said work-life integration was a value, and that you can't have one or the other be really lopsided. Okay, so let's unpack that. What would be a behavior that we would want someone to exhibit to make sure that we know they were honoring the work-life balance or work-life integration piece? Any set boundaries, and tell me more about what that means. Okay, so Todd mentioned setting boundaries and making sure if you've got too much work, it's your responsibility to let others know and figure out how to balance that out. So I would, it would be the behavior is really, I'm going to be proactive at managing my work-life integration, and I'm owning the fact that I'm going to have to get help and balance that out. Okay. So you can see how that now takes that to the next level and makes a behavior that you can actually talk to someone about. So if someone's constantly overwhelmed with work and they don't look like they've got that balance in there, they're not following through with the behavior of asking for help when they need it. What's another one? Give me another value, anybody? Okay, values relationships. So what's a behavior, Amanda, that you would put to that one so that you would know, you could explain to a new associate or employee that values relationships, here's what I expect you to deliver on from a behavioral perspective. Okay. Okay, so a behavior is there, weekly meetings with our team to build those relationships. That's something that you can see and feel and you can quantify. Okay, so the important part of this behaviors piece is many times I see companies with the values, there's like 5 words of different values. And I ask them, how do you make sure that you know someone is exhibiting those values? But better yet, how are you using those values to attract the right people to your company? What behaviors do you need to see whether or not they have the capability of exhibiting? And then how are you recognizing, rewarding, promoting, engaging people on those values? So when you think about what are your key attributes as a company, and I will tell you with the generational differences is this next generation that's in the workforce and the one coming, they are very well connected to these values and what are you doing as a company. So messaging that, messaging it to your potential employees or associates, messaging it to your current employees and associates. And I will also strongly suggest that it has to be part of your onboarding and training and development programs so that people are clear on here's who we are at the core. Here's how we will exhibit those behaviors that lead us to those values. So how do we get to people to share our core values? We don't. We actually find people who are predisposed to share those behaviors and core values. If we clearly know who we are at the core, we can interview for core values. We can make sure that we have the right questions in our process. If we know what we're looking for, we find the people who are predisposed to, and we hire and retain them based on our values. I always look at, first of all, do we have the right people in our company? And if those people are in the right seats. If they're the right people, they're right because they espouse our values, they know who we are at the core, and they live that out. If they're the right people, then I move to, are they in the right seats? They may or may not be in the right seat using their given talents, their knowledge, skills, and abilities to their fullest. So we have an obligation to make sure, first of all, we have the right people. Do they espouse our values? Do they get who we are at the core? And are they aligned with that? We do that through the hiring process, the interview process, and even that our messaging, and we'll talk about the employee value proposition and our employer brand for that. But then if they're not in the right seats, how do I help them get to the right seats so that they can be their best self? So recognize and reward with your values, and let those who do not share your core values go elsewhere. Now, I'm sure most of you in this room right now are cringing. It's like, okay, if they go elsewhere, who's going to do this and who's going to do that, and how am I going to get this done? I see that a lot in every section across the country. You just cringe when you think about the fact that, okay, this isn't the right person, but oh my gosh, I don't have anybody to replace them. How am I going to get this done? What happens if you keep one person in your company that doesn't share your core values? Doug. Oh, absolutely. You run the risk of having that person run off other people. And most of the time it's very subtle. If you have a top performer, the star you were thinking about that you created these values off in the first place, if you have a star performer and they see you harboring a less than mediocre at best performer or someone that doesn't espouse your values, they're going to find plenty of other places that they can go. to be able to fit better and to work with a company that's not willing to harbor someone just for the sake of having a warm body there. We're seeing that consistently. Yes, Michelle. Excellent question. Yes, I would recommend situationally based scenarios, but I've also got some slides coming up here on the individual and understanding the individual motivating needs and drives. So I will ask you to hold me accountable for that, Michelle. If I don't answer that question in more detail before we get about 2/3 of the way through this, then call me on it again. Thanks for bringing that up. Okay, so I didn't want this to be a full session on core values, but honestly, I really feel so strongly about this, especially as we're looking to attract this next generation of workers. We've got to figure this piece out. We have to know this. We have to be living it within our companies. And it's also a differentiator for our clients and customers as well, or patients, for those of you in the room or on the line that are from healthcare. Any last questions on core values? There's a whole, I mean, that's like a whole day long workshop on that, but I wanted to at least give you some thought process to start with. All right, so I'm going to take that now to the next level on attracting the right talent. And as I mentioned earlier, the right talent may be different for me as it is for someone else in this room, but it's important for us to know what is the right talent. Because if you don't have, I always tell people, if you don't have that roadmap for where you're going to go, you know, what's that destination, any old road will get you there, right? And if you don't have that ideal right talent picture for your company, any old road will get you there. So our current reality is this: we have most of our talent right now that has a transitional mindset. Has anyone lost an employee or associate in the last 6 months? Raise your hand if you've lost one person in the last 3 to 6 months. Okay. So we know that this, and we're feeling the pain of this. If they don't get what they want, they're going to move on. And I will say too, I was at a national convention last week and we had this panel of 3 college students I mentioned, and they are being heavily recruited, and our people, as we probably know, are being heavily recruited even after we're in a job. We may not even be looking for a job, but there are smart, savvy people out there trying to figure out how to even attract those that don't even know that they didn't want to be there, right? So compensation is only one part of the equation for the right people. First of all, we know that there are lots of other ways that we can attract and retain talent. And interestingly enough, this panel last week that I'd mentioned to you, all 3 of them said to this large audience that price was not even in their top 2 factors to make that decision. So compensation was not even in their top 2 most important priorities for them selecting a business. And I know we try to kind of think about, oh, geez, if we lost someone, do we have the right compensation package? Oh my gosh, well, they left for 50 cents more an hour or 2,000 more a year. Seriously? That wasn't the comp. Sorry to say that, folks. That was not the comp. That was the issue. And I think we have to look deeper than comp. Flexible work schedules, career advancement opportunities, desires to be developed and trained. You know, there's a lot of income potential above and beyond that initial hourly or base wage. But I will say also the dramatic shift is culture is really being redefined for us. And one of the ways that I've tried to phrase this is you have a culture in your company. Everyone has a culture. Culture, unfortunately, is pretty nebulous in some cases, and it's hard to define. But you have 2 choices. You can define your culture purposefully, starting with your core values and a number of other things that you should be thinking about in your culture. You can design that purposefully, or it's going to be designed on its own. So you have to ask yourself as leaders in this room, is culture important enough for you to purposefully design what that will look like and how it will be operating within your ecosystem? Or do you just continue to let it form itself by the values and beliefs and behaviors that are collected with everybody in your kind of work group, if you will? But culture is no longer just a set of fun activities. I have one client over in the Rocky Mountains market that they are really focusing on trying to develop a cohesive work team. And this is probably the most profound cultural development activity. I'm calling it an activity because it's not culture, it's just an activity. They're taking all of their workers to Mexico for 4 days. And it's, if they wanted to bring their spouse, they pay an extra $400 and their spouse can come, all inclusive. They're just, you know what? We need a work kind of team building activity. That's not culture. That's an activity that hopefully they're building more engagement with their team members. But culture is no longer just a set of fun activities. There's a desire to be connected and engaged in the vision and the growth of our companies or our businesses. But we have to shift from what we do to how do we all do this together. We are all accountable for our cultures. We're all accountable for the success of our own professional careers. But also when you're thinking about the roles that each of you play in a leadership capacity, we're also accountable to make sure that we're growing and developing those that we are in, that are part of our work teams. So I want to talk a little bit more about what attracts people to our companies, because it's not the one size fits all. We have to study our best performers and then translate those key findings into messages that entice others. So when we're trying to attract the right people, we've already talked about the values equation here, but now we have to think about, all right, so what will make this an exciting future for Samantha or for Bill? And how do we really put that into writing? That's what I call the employee value proposition. Have any of you, do you have a clearly defined employee value proposition that everybody shares within your company? Okay, not seeing any hands. So this will be an interesting conversation, because the way you create an employee value proposition is ask those in your company who are already really excited about being here. So what initially attracted them to your company? If they joined you, what was the biggest decision factor? Like I mentioned, those students last week said that comp wasn't in their top 2. When they come to work each day, what do they look forward to? Why do they come to work in the first place? Is this just a paycheck? What intrigues, invigorates, and drives them to perform every day? This next one about what are they learning? What are they learning? How are they growing and developing as an individual? How are they growing and developing as a leader? How are they growing and developing in their career path? And that next question, why do they stay? Katie, what makes you stay here? Now, someone asked me once, well, isn't that a little bit leading? Like, do we want them to stay? You know, it's like, how do you frame the question? Think about your motive in that. What's your motive for making them want to stay? Can't be just for us. It has to be for them as well. It has to be, how do you help them continue to grow and evolve to their future career aspirations? And then when was the last time they thought about leaving? That's another one of those loaded edged questions. What prompted it? Again, we're not trying to put ideas in people's heads, but if you frame this up in such a manner that you're really trying to figure out what makes you want to stay here, what engages you, what excites you, and then what can I do to make your experience better at work? Wow, those would be some pretty compelling questions. So I want you to think about for a moment your star performer. And I want you to write down one of these questions that you think you'd ask the star performer to help you understand what makes them stay with us. Write down one question. Then I want you to put some teeth to that one. Write down the date that you're going to have that question asked of that star performer. I'm all about accountability here. And to take this one step deeper, write down a name of a person that you are going to tell the answer to that question to. To be your accountability partner. So if your date is by the end of the week, I was going to ask the question about why does that person stay? Who's the person I'm going to tell the answer to? If you can't find a person, put my name down. Call me. Tell me what your answer was. Accountability. So when you've studied those best performers and you've understood some of those answers to what makes them stay, why are they excited to be here? That's where you've got the data to create your employee value propositions. The employee value proposition also helps you define your employer brand. So how many of you have marketing functions within your companies? Okay, a few of you. So when you think about that, you have to give your marketing company some kind of background information to help them figure out how to market your business, right? All this is making sure we know who we are as an employer, what makes us special. That derives your employer brand. Employer brand. So when you go to devise your employer brand, it should consist of your values. It should consist of your employee value proposition. And when you think of your employee value proposition, you should think about what emotions you want to trigger in your potential new employees. How you're going to capture those hearts and minds. Because the scary part is if we aren't thinking about this from our people's perspective, there are probably 2 or 3 or 20 or 30 other companies who are trying to entice those same great people from us. And I have seen this happen where, they come right on your company's site in some cases. And if they're not on your physical site, they're on LinkedIn. There's big business in LinkedIn recruiting right now. And it's not waiting until we have a job open. It's like, you know what? That person looks like they've really got some smart stuff going on. I wonder if they would even entice a conversation. And even if they haven't thought about leaving, you can guarantee if they haven't had someone that's really making them stick, I call it organizational stickiness, they're probably going to give that conversation at least a try. So make sure that they're stuck with us. Core values, that we're living and breathing those. We're promoting the culture of continuous improvement. Make people want to join you. I'm not going to do a whole class on creating your employer brand, but I will tell you it should consist of your values. It should consist of what are those attributes that make people want to stick, and that you should spend as much time market messaging that to your potential people as you do spending your marketing messaging to your clients and your customers and your patients. Because it's a whole new ball game out there, folks. And we have to spend as much time in this area of our business as we do in gaining new business. Because my guess is most of us, I've met most of you prior to us starting here in the room today, most of us are in a people-driven industry. Is that correct? We cannot do what we do without people. We can't replace it for the most part with a machine or something else. So we know we have to do this better. So creating those employee value propositions, knowing what makes us unique, it's our differentiators, similar to our customer differentiators. This is our people differentiator. And your employer brand should be something when you put it up on your website, it grabs people. How much time do you think people spend perusing a website for a potential position to apply for before they leave? I'm just curious. 1 minute. They're on the site. If there's something that entices them, they might either click, yeah, careers, or no, I'm going on to the next one. Some cases it's a lot less than that. When you're thinking of your employer brand, go out to your website and see how quick you can go in and apply for one of your jobs. Do all of you do some kind of a career page or something on your website that says, you know, how to contact you for a career there? If you can't get through your own website in less than 30 seconds to find out how to apply for a job, you're missing a huge opportunity. We've got a transitional workforce, not to mention the fact that our baby boomers, the statistic that I saw is during the first year of COVID, 1 million more baby boomers voluntarily exited the workforce faster than they expected to. So we're losing a huge part of our population just through that. And then I think it was like 700,000 more, and I want to make sure I get my words right here, voluntarily opted out of the workforce for various reasons, but they cited COVID as the reason. And we looked at the fact that we had so many more jobs than we had people even before they used COVID as the reason, well, we don't have a job. So think about that. But think about when you are putting something out on your website, it's got to be fast. The one pet peeve I have is if I go to a website and I have to, go in to sign in to, do my resume or apply for a job. If you ask me to type anything in there that's already on my resume, sorry. Think of the generation we're trying to entice now. And there are several generations in the workforce. I don't want to just, kind of hang my hat on this younger generation. But this generation has had everything immediately at their fingertips. And if they can't just pop in a resume or send you their LinkedIn profile, if you're asking them to do any duplicate work, forget it. Unless you've got someone that's really desperate, they may spend more time there, or they are so excited about the opportunity at your company, which is great. I'm not discounting that. But make sure that you're doing that in a very proactive way that's easy for them to get onto your website. They can apply for a job in, a minute or less, and they're not being asked to duplicate any information that they could upload something for you or put a link out there. But think about what your website says about you as an organization. What's your social media presence? What's in it for the new hire, that employee value proposition? And one of the things I don't think any of us are really good at is proactive recruiting. A lot of time we're recruiting because we have an open hiring requisition. And I like to recommend that you are pretty much constantly filling your pipeline. Think about, for those of you that have businesses where you've got to entice customers or clients or patients, whatever it is. We always talk about this concept of filling the funnel. And think about, we have business development folks in a lot of our company that their goal is to be out there filling that pipeline, filling that funnel. If any of you are in the human resources or talent and culture or whatever you call it within your company field, think about your position as that business developer to fill the pipeline for potential people in your company. It's a whole new world out there to attract the right people and then keep them on board. And if you think about your role as constantly filling that pipeline and keeping it full, and then being able to keep those people that you already have, and make sure that you're using one of your greatest referral sources for new people, and it's your people. Offer some kind of referral bonuses. If you're not offering your own people some type of a reward, I don't care what it is, something that should be meaningful for them. I've seen some companies offer up to $10,000 if you can pull in someone that that's going to be a good employee for your company. Pay your employees for bringing in referrals. Of course, they got to be happy. So hopefully you're doing everything right in that aspect, but reward your employees for bringing those referrals in as well. Questions, comments on that? Has anyone heard of the ideal candidate profile? Do any of you have an ideal client profile or an ideal customer profile of this is the perfect type of an individual or company I want to work with? Okay, students ahead. We should have an ideal candidate profile as well, based on our values, based on those employee value proposition items. It should be job specific. So give me anybody throw out a position that you've got open right now. Controller. Okay. If I'm creating my ideal candidate profile for a controller, it needs to be very specific for that position. Or let's just say you've got I'll call it maybe a school of positions. Maybe you've got project manager, and it could span many different parts of the company. So it should be job specific. It should also have the knowledge, skills, and abilities and experience necessary for them to be the ideal candidate profile. Knowledge, skills, and abilities. Knowledge and skills are very different from abilities. The way I frame it is, knowledge is, I read the book on it, and I now can figure out how to do a new kind of raised garden. Skill is, okay, I can actually plant that new raised garden now because I read the book. I know how to do that. Ability means I actually have something to harvest from that garden because it really worked. So think about that when you're doing your ideal candidate profiles. Knowledge and skills, but what abilities? Competencies for some of you in the room, you probably are very familiar with that. And then what experience is absolutely critical for that ideal candidate profile? And then what are the motivations, goals, and aspirations that you would expect to see in an ideal candidate profile? And I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute here. And then finally, what are those values and beliefs and behaviors? So when you create your ideal candidate profile, it helps you take all of these factors into account so you know exactly what is the right person. That hopefully lessens the, oh, this is a warm body, and oh, we had a good conversation. Do they really fit your ideal candidate profile? And here's the kicker for this. If you have more than one person that's doing the interviewing process, make sure that they all agree on this. I have sat with groups where someone believes we need this person that has this motivation and this goal and this drive and this need, and another leader that's in that interview process has this belief that that's where they should be. What happens in that interview process with that candidate then? If they're not interviewing together, or even if they are, come to think of it. Yep, the candidate has a lack of confidence because they're not seeing some cohesion among those folks that are doing the interview process. So that candidate doesn't feel like you have your act together and you really know what you're looking for, and they're trying to shape themselves to fit in whatever each of those interviewers' ideal profiles are, which is not a win-win situation for anybody. So that ideal candidate profile that has those 4 parameters and is agreed to by all who are hiring for that position or who will actually be impacted by that person once they become an employee. So we all agree to what that ideal candidate profile is so that we can actually use that as we interview. So we create those interview questions based on that. We ask behavioral questions around those core values. And we never, ever, ever waver on values. When we do full people assessments, we'll do it from a right people. Are they the right person? Do they espouse our core values? And we do it from a right seats perspective. If I have someone in a company that's in the right, they're the right people, but they're not in the right seat, then it's a coaching, developing, mentoring, training type of a situation. If I have a situation where they're not the right person for the company, my first question is, do they get what the right person is? Do they even understand what we think the right person is? And if the answer is yes, and they still aren't doing it, then they should not be here. I had one person tell me, well, I think maybe we should think about retraining them then. I said, okay, can you retrain those core values if they aren't inside them and they don't believe they need to make a change? Probably not. I have one law that I follow. I do a lot of executive coaching. I'm a certified professional executive coach, and I coach business owners and leaders across the country. I have one law that I will never waver on, and it is if you do not have a will to make a change, I will not coach you. I can coach anything else, but I can't coach will for you. If you have no will, there's no need to even bother taking the next step. And I have had companies say to me, you know what? We just really don't want to lose this person. I said, well, I'll meet with them. If I don't get a yes to the will question, you are doing the wrong thing at this point. If they don't have a desire to make a change, doesn't matter how much coaching they get. So make sure that you never waver on those values, because if they don't believe it, you can't make them do it on a regular basis. All right. Questions, comments, thoughts on that segment? It is. It's challenging in healthcare. It's challenging in every industry that we are in. And it's a tough role for us to hold. Michelle, did you have a question? I would say it's going to be somewhat generational, but I also think it's going to be situational. And let me share why I'm answering it that way. Because depending on where that individual is in their, I'll call it their career progression, at some point someone might say, well, heck, I made it. I didn't ever think I was going to be at this salary level. So now I'm going to work toward an aspirational kind of level in my career. And someone else might say, well, you know what? I'm not anywhere near up toward the aspirational side, but I really don't care about that right now. I really just need to maximize my financial position. So I think it's situational. I think there is some generational with it as well, because and I'll give you in just a few moments, I'll give you the top one that they did mention that drove them to make those selections as well. But I think it's something where you have to understand the individual as well to really get to the bottom of that answer. So I want to talk about retaining great talent now, because we've gotten to the point where we've understand, what are we at the core? How are we going to make sure we entice the right people that share our values and behaviors and beliefs? But now what are we going to do to retain them? And of course, that's a great big maze unto itself, because at this point now, we want to look at a number of things. And so first of all, retaining great talent requires a comprehensive, integrated plan. It's not any one thing, as we talked about already. It's not just, oh, we're paying them a heck of a lot of money, or wow, we offer these great benefits, or gee, they get to travel, or gee, they don't have to travel, or whatever that is. So we have to really think about a systemic issue with multiple layers as we're thinking about retention. So it starts with that you can see at the core that building great culture is going to help you even in the development of your talent process. So there are many ideas. I'm not going to go through all of these, but I wanted to share at a snapshot what are all of those major components that you need to think about as you're looking to try and develop that culture. So there's this ongoing feedback loop that needs to be part of any great retention effort, whether that's formal or informal. It could be something as simple as you are, as a leader, checking in with your folks to see, is there something, that one question, is there something I can do to provide greater engagement for you? There could be some kind of a formal feedback mechanism that you offer. Is there an employee engagement survey? Is there a way that they can anonymously provide feedback on their engagement? So some kind of an ongoing feedback loop. There's also this concept around new compensation thinking. Compensation is not just the dollar amount. It's all of those other benefits that come along with that. And what's the comp package? And does it actually entice people to stay long term? So there's a whole new thinking around comp. I'm not even going to get into all of that today, because the comp and benefits analysis and design is a whole topic unto itself. But should be thinking about, what is our comp philosophy today? What does it need to be in the future? Do we have engagement across the entire community? Do people feel that they are connected somehow. I mentioned the concept of organizational stickiness earlier. And I'm not saying we're not immune to any of this as well. We had a major leader that was enticed to join another firm. And we asked about that individual's, kind of what went into their decision process. And we felt like there was this great stickiness. Well, what we realized is he was only really close to one person in the company, and that was his performance coach. And he didn't feel that deep connection to others. So when I talk about the organizational stickiness concept, make sure that everybody in your company has at least 2 to 3 close relationships with others in the company, because it's harder to let 2 or 3 or 4 people down than it is to let one person down when you're leaving. Okay, think about those relationships, even yourself, your personal relationships, and why you do what you do. You don't want to let your close friends down. Build those sticky relationships in your company. Authentic leadership. That, I will tell you, the number one reason why people leave a company is because they just don't care for their direct boss. Do you have a strong, authentic leadership? Are you investing in leadership training and development, and not just sending them to a class somewhere and saying, oh, wow, you're just not a good leader. You go to whatever class for an hour and you should come back as a leader. That needs to be part of your ongoing training and development program. If the leadership is the number one reason why people leave our companies, make sure that we have that as a high strategic priority. I spend most of my time creating visions and ideal future states for businesses and business owners. And this is one of those critical components that we talk about. Do we have authentic leadership? And are we growing and developing authentic leaders? I'll give you my definition of a leader. You are not a leader until you've created a leader who has created another leader. You're not a leader until you've created a leader who has created another leader. That's the true authentic that you need. And then values that we can measure, and the communication piece are things that we've already talked about. But that's that comprehensive integrated plan. Now I'm going to pull a few pieces out of that I find particularly helpful, because it all starts with this comprehensive, as you think about who we have in our company. Remember, I already talked about right people, but let's talk right seats at this point. Who do we have and what are they good at, and are they in the right seats? And that starts with this comprehensive talent assessment. It's proactive, it's intentional, it doesn't happen at the performance review point. It happens on a basis of real-time, proactive. We're looking to identify high potentials as part of that. We're evaluating high potential employees. We know that they're competent. We understand what levels of competencies, and we're preparing individuals for advancements into our company. Because remember that earlier slide I showed where we're sorely lacking in the supply over the demand? We're not going to find any more leaders. The chances of us hiring a good leader from outside our company that comes in and immediately embodies our culture and our values is pretty tough. Our best bet is to grow them from within ourselves. Oops, went back instead of forward. So talent assessments, avoid extremely costly vacancies in our positions. We help create a career path, a succession plan. We keep those positions, that constant pipeline full. It assures stability of the whole operation, because we know if we wait to fill positions at the nth hour after we've lost someone or they're just about to leave, we're really going to struggle. But it also helps us retain those high potential employees, because a good talent assessment not only helps you understand who you have and what their opportunities are, but it helps you create the proactive plan that gets them to their highest potential. And of course, the whole diversity piece, I'm not going to get into today, but that diversity, equity, and inclusion, I'll give you my quick definition in the world according to Tina, the definition of DEI. And I'll give you just an example. Diversity means that everyone, no matter who they are, what their background is, everyone gets invited to the dance. That means diversity. Equity means Everybody gets the ticket to the dance, and everyone gets asked to dance. Inclusion means they get invited to the dance, I get asked to dance, and I actually can understand the music. So when you think of diversity, equity, and inclusion in your company, are you at the point where everybody understands the music and they get asked to dance? Think about it from that scenario. That's how we get a diverse workforce. So, quick example of a people map here. Basically, all it is you take your names of your people, you put your core organizational values in these columns. You can put core competencies up here too if you're doing a work team. So let's just say you're doing your schedulers. You can put what are those major core competencies for a scheduler. This is from some of the work around EOS, where do they get what they're supposed to do? Do they want to do this? Do they have the capacity intellectually to do it? You can certainly use some of that. But basically the values, the competencies, and then just a simple rating. Are they a plus? Are they a minus? Or are they a plus minus? And you should have this for everyone in your company, because that way you know if someone's at a minus in one of your core values, okay, what do I need to coach, teach, train to get them to a plus? Are they capable of getting to a plus? Never waver on those values. You should have all pluses in your values. And then what are those core competencies by position? Simple tool for a talent assessment. I'm sure there are plenty other ones out there. I just happened to bring this one up. There's also something called a talent and succession matrix. And this is by plotting, and sometimes this is helpful as a visual if you've got a department. You can actually you'll see the x-axis is the performance. So am I very low on the performance or very high on the performance? The y-axis is the potential. Am I very low on my potential overall here or very high? And you just kind of plot people out. Okay, so Susan, she's really a top performer. But wow, she doesn't have a lot of potential at the company based on what we're trying to do. So she may be a high performer, but medium potential. Or she may be a medium performer, but wow, if she could just perform up, she'd have a lot of potential in the company. So I'd plot her up there. What this does is it gives you the lay of the land in a visual, and you'll see that some of these boxes, you put the names in here, some of these boxes are blue. Those are the ones that I'm going to make a deliberate plan for, because you can't coach everybody everything all the time. You have to kind of choose and focus. So here are the ones that I'm going to do some coaching for. So again, just another visual. This is not as detailed as that talent assessment, but this is really more of a succession matrix. It helps you plan their growth and development plans. And these 9 boxes are available out there as well. So I'll leave you with one point on this section. Spend as much time re-recruiting your current people as you spend recruiting new people. If you're not re-recruiting your current people, I will guarantee you, in most cases, someone else is recruiting them. So when I mentioned on that 9-box document there are several different boxes up there, and you can create your career development plan. Career pathing is the #1 reason why those 3 college students last week sat in front of that audience and they said, well, why did you choose to go where you went? One of the guys said, I interned at a company since my freshman year in college. I've now finished 3 summers of internship there. I will not go to that company as a final employer. What they told us, though, is that one common denominator is every one of those employment offer packages and every one of the interviews that they did led them to some ideal future career path. And they clearly delineated, okay, well, you're in this particular position right now. Here's where you can go. And if they want to go all the way there, that's great. Maybe I only want to go here, but that's the career pathing process. So they were all offered a very clear career path, but of course that starts from within. Do we have a clearly defined career path for all of our positions, first of all? And it's a proactive process. We first of all have to know what's the path for those positions that we are hiring for, but those positions we already have on board as well. And it enables those employees to understand and identify the opportunities available within the organization. And I did a fair amount of interviewing too. And one of the things that the common denominators, when I would see people that were leaving, I would ask them, what was the most critical thing that you weren't getting here that you think you're going to get there? Basically, what's your ideal future career state, and why didn't you think you were going to be able to hit here? And unfortunately, I got a lot of blank stares. They couldn't even articulate what their ideal future career state is because they didn't think about it from that perspective. So remember my comment earlier about if you don't have a destination, any old road's going to get you there. Well, if they don't have a clear destination of their ideal future career state, it doesn't matter where they're going to go because they really don't know what that looks like. So they're just going to keep hopping to the next star. Here's an example of a career path model. This is not the best example, I'll tell you right now. I don't think I would always put in here these years of experience and how you're going to get to that next level. I'd be careful about salary as well in here. I'd be careful about these requirements if I'm not going to stick to them. There's plenty of examples of career path models out on the web. I talked with a client last week. They are using a puzzle visual, which basically they don't include any salary in there, and they don't lock them into a year of experience, because what is that going to do to a new individual that's coming into this position, job, whatever this job title is? Holy cow, is it going to take me 10 years to get there? Be careful about that, because you may have a star performer, or in our world today, you've got someone that left at that manager level, and normally I wouldn't put someone at that manager level that doesn't have an X number of years of experience, but wow, we really need that right now, so I might have to fudge on that. So just be careful what you put in your career path model so that people don't hang, their hat on, oh, it's going to take me 10 years. I'm not going to stick out that long. What's the average amount of tenure that employees have today? How long are they staying at companies? 2 years? That's a little high. Yeah, depends on the business, but I will tell you, I've seen 1 year. Has anybody had a candidate ghost you after an interview and they were supposed to show up on the first day and you're like, where the heck are you? Yep. Or even ghost you on the interview. You know what? I got this other offer. I'm not even going to bother following up with you. So here's another way you can do this. You could map out that individual's career path, Where do they want to be in the next year, 2 years, 3 years? That's the power of career pathing. It's not putting them on a predetermined model. It's working with them to individually understand their motivating needs and drives, where they want to go, and how can we help them get there? And almost more importantly, what's their stake in this? What's their skin in that game? How are they going to get there? Because we have to proactively plan for this puzzle of succession. Succession starts the day they come in your doors. We should already have a plan for who's next to fill that position, especially for critical roles. We do a full succession planning model. We identify those key positions. I'm just going to give you a quick roadmap. If you're thinking about succession planning, identify, at least start with those most critical positions in your company that you just could least afford to lose. I want you to write down one name of a person right now that you can least afford to lose in your company. And I want you to commit to having a conversation about what's their career path within your companies. If you do nothing else out of today's session, but get one person to commit to their ideal future career path with your company, that's one less person you're going to have to go out and recruit for. But go through that least afford to lose group, determine a readiness level, where are they at this point? What do we need to do to create their succession plan? That's, creating those leadership competencies. What do they need to have? What do we need to build in? Knowledge, skills, and abilities. What are those gaps? And then how do we, you can do individual career blueprints, which are very detailed by individual. Here's where you're going to go. Here's how you're going to get there. Get them to commit to what they're going to commit to. But not everybody wants the same path. So I want to get back to that question a little bit earlier about, how do we motivate individuals? But everyone has a little bit of a different motivating need and drive, right? Not everybody wants the same path. How many of you use some type of a tool, a behavioral assessment, some type of a motivating needs and drives tool within your businesses? A couple of you? I would suggest, if you're not already using something, you strongly consider some type of a behavioral drives, motivating needs tool, because basically what happens is everyone comes to our business with 3 different parts of themselves. They've got the knowledge, skills, the experience, the ability. We call that the briefcase. Then they have their drives, their cognitive abilities. That's kind of the head. And then they've got the heart, the values and the interests and so on. We've already talked about the heart. We've already talked a little bit about the knowledge and skills. But if we're looking at that kind of the whole package, we should know what motivates, drives, what behaviors drive them and move them. That's the head, the heart, and the briefcase. So think about every potential ideal candidate, head, heart, briefcase. Do we really understand what motivates and drives them? Culture comes into that. We can drive that through resumes and interviews. We can drive that through behavioral assessments. Those drives and motivating needs come from that head part. And that's a very difficult one for us to decode unless we're using some kind of a resource to do that. But basically what those motivating needs and drives do, it helps you understand the unique makeup of the teams as well. And if you have a team that's an innovation and agility team, those are the ones that are the great blue sky thinkers. They're always out there trying to advance you to the next level. You've got to have some of those folks that are results and discipline oriented, those solid performers. You can't have everybody in one aspect of a true solid balanced team. So understanding the motivating needs and drives or behavioral types of indicators that are important, you can then create the best teams. And I would be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about this generational situation. So the question Michelle asked earlier is it different by generation as well? I will tell you right now, I think we have something like 7 or 8 generations in the workforce. The boomers, they're an optimistic, competitive, dedicated group. They are digitally challenged. All of us probably know that. I know some of us in this room are probably in that boomer generation where, okay, I'll do this technology thing if I have to, but you know what? I'm just not good with that. I'm over exaggerating that. I don't want to stereotype anybody in that category, but typically they're a little more digitally challenged. And they, diversity isn't always at the top of their list, but they know that there's an important part of that. We've got the Gen Xers in the workforce. They're the resourceful group. This group is work, my life is my life. I don't really necessarily want to cross those over. They're very self-driven. They're the digital trail breakers. They're the ones that are out there kind of saying, well, can we automate this? Should we do more of this electronic stuff? And they feel like the diversity in the workforce is something we need to make a big step in. Millennials. The millennials are a little bit more idealistic in their approach. They want to collaborate versus command. The boomers are a little bit more command. I can tell you, I see this in the industry that I'm in, that some of those folks in that boomer industry is like, well, just do it the way we did it. It's worked. We're successful. Or, work those 3,000 hours. That's how you're going to get up the ladder. Okay, I'm not so sure that's going to be motivational. The Xers are more self-command. The millennials are let's collaborate, not command. I'm sure some of you are thinking of a millennial right now, but if they tell you one more time, let's all talk about this together and come to consensus, you're probably going to come unglued. And then we've got our Gen Zers, those digital natives. They expect diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's not it's a nice idea. We darn well better be doing it. They also expect to be heard. This generation wants to be part of those decisions. They want to be part of creating your vision, part of creating your mission, part of living out your values and creating that. They want to work in the right culture. So we can't any longer say that I haven't focused on our culture. I haven't designed the ideal culture because of who we are and what we're doing with our values, beliefs, and behaviors. And then we've got some workplace views that differ by each of these different groups. I'm not going to go into all of this. And I want to add a caveat here. I am not trying to stereotype any generation. That doesn't mean everybody in the boomer generation is going to be like this. It doesn't mean that everybody in the millennial generation is going to be like this. These are some characteristics that we see that tend to trend, but generational personalities are made up of the experiences that we were exposed to during our formative years. And what we've seen is that usually by age 8, we are pretty much hardwired with some of those things. And unless there's some major life event that has changed that, we know that that is, you know, we kind of create these things in our mind. Think about what our boomer generation was exposed to. We were in some pretty significant war time in this country for our boomers. Think about our I think it was our millennials that when we started with the World Wide Web and how quickly technology advanced. So think about what shapes the lives of those in different generations. And again, don't stereotype anybody, but there are just some generational personalities that I think about. So what employees value most are even-keeled bosses who make time for one-on-one meetings, who help people puzzle through problems and ask questions, not dictate answers, and who take an interest in employees' lives and careers. I love this quote from Build a Better Boss because it really talks to the importance of us as leaders. How do we play a significant role in engaging those in our workforce? I'm going to give you just a couple of other quick points, and I know we're at the end of our time here, correct, Katie? So I'm just going to talk a little bit about a process called stay interviews. This is a little bit about that employee value proposition and what makes you stay. Happy to share this. Are we going to send out the PowerPoint via PDF possibly to the group? Okay, so you'll get these. There are some ideas for your engagement playbook out here. I didn't want to get into all of these things. I know we were going to have some overlap with time here, but I wanted to give you enough to be able to take this back. So I promised you a call to action today, and I meant that. Hopefully you've already wrote down 2 action items, but I want you to make sure that you walk away with 2 things you're going to do today because of what we've talked about here this afternoon and this morning. Because if you do nothing with this, you're going to get the same old, same old. You know, the definition of insanity is doing the same old things, thinking you're going to get different results. I keep talking to my 16-year-old son about that. Hasn't quite sunk in yet, but we're getting there, right? So what are you going to do? 2 things you're going to do today as a result of what we've talked about. And I've given you the head start already with the 2 I forced you to write down on your papers. So with that, I will close. Any questions? I'm happy to stick around if folks are on the live field and they want to ask any questions in the chat. Happy to do that. My contact information is out on the slide deck. I work across the country. I speak nationally, locally, regionally. Happy to help in any way. I love working with the folks here at Sterling Seacrest, Doug and Suzanne and Jared and Katie and everyone. Tammy, wonderful group. Really appreciate the opportunity today. With that, I bid you a farewell.
Thank you so much. That was great. A lot of good ideas to take back to our companies. Just, you know, we talked about culture and you know, sitting there thinking about this program. We're in our 9th year of doing these kinds of programs here at this location. We've got a room now. It's kind of evolved. We got some technology that doesn't blow up on us every other time. So we're really, this is kind of part of our culture. I mean, we do a lot of idea exchange and training, and you know, we love being able to bring in subject matter experts like Tina to talk about challenges that face our businesses. If you have ideas for programs, please let us know. Let Katie know, because we look to keep this fresh and not too insurance-y. If you know what I mean. Be on the lookout. Our next program is scheduled for May 4th. It's going to be a mock cyber breach and response. So this is something that's been in the news a lot, and it's getting a lot of attention in our business. So we think that's going to be a really neat and different program. So be on the lookout for those invitations. And then just finally, I want to thank Katie. She does a lot of work behind the scenes to make these things happen. That you probably corresponded with her times before you got here today. She ordered all the lunches, gets all the AV equipment lined up, and does a great job. So thanks very much, and hope to see you at a future program.